Hey, we started this series called Work and Faith several weeks ago. We're trying to get a theological vision for our jobs, what we spend most of our days doing, and what we will spend most of our life doing, which is working. You got to have a theological vision for it, otherwise all that goes to waste. And so we've talked about work being this expression of the image of God in us, releasing creativity and blessing into the world, taking our might, using it to gather up all that's in our heart and soul, get it out there. If you don't get it out there, it feels frustrating. This great vision for work, release creativity. Sometimes that sounds really idealistic. Because work is just sometimes hard. Work is sometimes a grind. We talked about work as a form of loving our neighbor. Our jobs, our careers, it's not about us. It's not about us fulfilling every hope and dream. It's not about us promoting and achieving and succeeding. It's about blessing other people. Great vision that's a great, meaningful vision. It's also exhausting. That's an exhausting vision for work. So sometimes work just feels like having a job you don't love, but you have to do. Not all work is exciting. Sometimes it's a grind. It's just a job. Sometimes like parenting. If you're here parenting, that's your job. Sometimes you're just fighting to live another day. Sometimes you're just fighting for tomorrow. Studying for classes you don't care about, that have nothing to do with your career trajectory? Well, just trying to pass that class, right? Sometimes work, it just is menial. Sometimes work is just mundane. Sometimes it just feels tedious. But the good news is that the Bible has a vision for this too. The Bible has something to say about this too. There are 3 texts that I want to work from today. I'm going to read them for you. So start with me in 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 10. But we urge you, brothers, to do this more and more, and to aspire to live quietly, to mind your own affairs, and to work with your hands as we instructed you, so that you may walk properly before outsiders and be dependent on no one. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, 7 through 12 says this, For you yourselves know how you ought to imitate us, because we were not idle when we were with you, nor did we eat anyone's bread without paying for it. But with toil and labor we worked night and day, that we might not be a burden to any of you. It was not because we do not have that right, but to give you and ourselves an example to imitate. For even when we were with you, we would give you this command: if anyone is not willing to work, let him not eat. For we hear that some among you walk in idleness, not busy at work, but busy bodies. For such persons we command and encourage in the Lord Jesus Christ to do their work quietly and to earn their own living. And then lastly, Ephesians 4, verse 28 says this, Let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with his own hands, so that he might have something to share with anyone in need. Any job, even the most menial of tasks, work with your own hands, for instance, it has immense value. That's what we're going to see today. And let me just say, all of us, everyone in here, are going to have seasons of life, especially at the beginning of your career, where you're doing stuff you don't want to do. You're doing stuff that does not excite you. You're doing stuff that does not resonate deeply with you and fulfill your aspirations. All of us are going to have seasons of life where work just feels like work. So we got to find value in that. Find value in that reality somewhere. So we're going to examine these verses from various angles, like a diamond with multiple facets. These verses do too. So we're going to study these verses to get value out of everyday work. Here's our 4 points for today. Here's the value of everyday work. Are you ready? 1, you get to make money. 2, you get to work hard. There's value in that. 3, you get to contribute to society. And number 4, you get to find hidden glory. Make money, you work hard, you contribute to society, you find hidden glory. And my goal is this, to preach God's word today, to present these 4 things to you and to sell you on them from God's word. Your job today is this. Can you find one of these, like attach yourself to one of these things to take with you out the door today into your work? Find one of these things to give you some more motivation in everyday common work. Make money, work hard, contribute to society, find hidden glory. So let's start with making money, the value of making money in work. 1 Thessalonians 4, 10 through 12. We urge you, brothers, to do this more and more. He's talking about loving one another, supporting one another in community, in the life of the church. Now he turns outside. He turns our attention outside the church, and he says this in 11. Paul says this, and to aspire to live quietly, to mind your own affairs, to work with your hands as we instructed you, so that you may walk properly before outsiders, key phrase here, and be dependent on no one. So Paul has in mind here able-bodied people who are choosing not to work, simply refusing to work. What seems to be happening in Thessalonica, in this church, in this congregation, is they believe that Jesus' return is so imminent, so at hand, that they're not working. They see no point in working because Jesus could come back at any moment, any day, and so they stop working. And the byproduct of this is they're broke. All these people are broke. They got no money, and now the church has to step in and take care of these people. Now, look, this is a right and good expectation for people who are in vulnerable situations. But this is not a right and good expectation for people who are simply choosing not to work. And that's what's happening in this church. Paul also writes in 2 Thessalonians 3, "But with toil and labor we worked night and day, that we might not be a burden to any of you." So again, Paul's writing here about when he was in the church in Thessalonica, he refused to take a paycheck from them so he couldn't be accused by his opponents of monetizing his ministry. That was one of the common accusations against Paul and the apostles. You're just having this platform and doing this to make money from people. So Paul, he refused to do that. He refused to collect a paycheck for his ministry. Instead, he had a side hustle. He worked with his hands, and that's how he made money and provided for himself so he wouldn't be a burden to this church. The point here is that Paul, he made money. Paul worked to make money for himself, to earn a living. In fact, Philippians 4, 10 through 12 says this. Paul's writing, he says, "I rejoice greatly that now at length you have revived your concern for me." So he's collecting a paycheck from these churches. He says, "You were indeed concerned for me, but you've had no opportunity," so they're giving him money. They're showing opportunity to care for him. Verse 11, though, look what he says. This is interesting. "Not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am in to be content." Verse 12, "I know how to be brought low, be broke, and I know how to abound," how to be doing well financially. He says, "In any and every circumstance, I've learned the secret of facing plenty, having a lot, and hunger, having little, abundance and need." So Paul, he's lived paycheck to paycheck before. He's also made good money in his life. And neither is more moral than the other. There's nothing wrong with making money. In fact, Paul is very clear, you should make money. You should make money in your work. Paul continues this in the same passage in 2 Thessalonians 3, verse 12. It's saying this. "Now such persons we command and encourage in the Lord Jesus Christ to do their work quietly and to earn their own living." To earn a living. And what he's saying here is life costs money. Life costs money, so you got to figure out a way to make some money. You know, as first century society innovated, currency, not lands, not goods, became the method of commerce. So society, during Paul's time even, is beginning to feel the shift away from agrarian wealth to monetized wealth. So, and here's what's happening. That Roman imperial currency is starting to regulate the market. So if you want to remain in the city, you'd have to find work that earned enough money to buy basic life necessities in that market so you could live in that city. Eventually then, jobs, they start flowing to the city. So if you wanted work that could sustain life in this new economy, in the cities where all the jobs are, you had to move to the city or live near the city and get a job that earned money to make a living in this new economic situation. The point is, life costs money. Then and now. There's no way around that fact. So, if you want to meaningfully participate in civilization, in society, if you want to live in a place like a cultural hub, a city, or in the outskirts of a city, you got to have a job so you can make money, so you can live there, period. The reality is we need to have jobs that make money so that we can live. Now, I know this is not exciting. I know this is not an exciting vision for work, but it's a realistic one. Sometimes we want jobs to be appealing. We want jobs to be glamorous. Well, that's less important than paying your bills and feeding yourself, and if you have dependents, taking care of your family. God gives us work so that we can house, clothe, and feed ourselves and others. And so, simply put, we're not entitled to anything more than that. I think we live in this cultural moment right now where we expect our jobs to be really fulfilling, to be special. We're not entitled to more than having a job that pays the bills so we can live in a place, take care of our family, and make impact while we're there. This is a real cultural crisis right now. Business Insider recently came out with this article documenting this cultural moment where so many men specifically are underemployed or not employed willfully. It says this: in the early 1950s, as many as 96% of prime working age American men who were between the ages of 25 and 54 were working full or part-time jobs per the Bureau of Labor Statistics. As of March, about 86% of working age men were employed. In this cohort's employment rate has lagged behind many developed countries in recent years. As such, many men are struggling to support themselves financially. Key line here. For every unemployed, prime-age American man looking for a job, there are over 4 neither working nor looking for work. And so the cultural crisis we're in is that there are many able-bodied men specifically who feel like the work that's available is beneath them. You know you're entitled when you choose to be unemployed or underemployed rather than do work that you feel is beneath you. A part of this is this cultural pressure to pursue higher degrees, work jobs that are within our career trajectory. But Paul would step into this conversation and say, the point of a job is to earn a living, to provide for needs, and to live in a place and make an impact. Nothing more. At the end of the day, you work a job to earn a living. And look, this is a noble and honorable thing. To work and earn a living, you may do a job you don't love so you can afford a decent life in a place where you can make an impact in many other ways. To work and earn a living, you may sleep less. You may make sacrifices so your kids might sleep safely and never go without. Work, it is more than they're earning money. It is. But certainly not less. So maybe consider if you've made spectacular the standard for work when at its most basic level. Work is making money to care for basic needs. Earn a living. We're trying to find the value in work. The purpose of work is to earn a living in a place. Here's another aspect of making money that's important. Ephesians 4:28 says this: let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with his own hands, so that he may have something to share with anyone in need. So the reason it's good to make money is so that you can be generous, so you can live a generous life. Proverbs 11:10 says this: when it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices. When the wicked perish, there are shouts of gladness. Why is that? Why is it when the righteous prosper, everyone's happy? Why is that? It's because when the righteous prosper, everybody else will too, because of their generosity. Proverbs 3:9 and 10 says this: honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will be bursting with wine. So God expects us to make money. He wants us to make money so that what? We can give it away and give it back to Him. So then what? What does He want to do then? He wants to take it. He wants to multiply it so you can do it all over again. Make money, give it away, give it back to Him. He who is faithful with little will be faithful with much. It is vital that Christians in the workplace bring this vision for earning money in their work into their life's passion. Being a generous person, that's a part of your vision for work. You know the name William Tyndale. All of us right now, if you have a Bible right now in front of you in English, it's because of William Tyndale. In the 1500s, although it was illegal, although it was dangerous, he translated the Bible from Latin to English and tried to get it into the hands of every common Christian. You know the name William Tyndale. He's one of the most important people who's ever lived, we could say, because of this reason alone. You don't know the name Humphrey Monmouth. Henry Monmouth protected Tyndale. He provided for him. He let him use his merchant ships to smuggle the first English New Testament all throughout England. This guy was his bankroller. This guy was the generous benefactor behind the translation of the Latin Bible into English. You might know the name George Whitefield. Everyone knows George Whitefield. One of the leaders of the First Great Awakening, one of the best preachers to ever walk the face of the earth. You might not know the name Lady Huntington, though, who was a wealthy widow and entrepreneur, and she was his greatest financial sponsor. More than that, she hosted dinners, elaborate dinners with the influentials of society, and invited Whitefield to come in and preach at those dinners. She lived on very little and gave the rest to the poor. She built an ornate chapel in England that the aristocratic residents would want to enter so that they could be converted by the preaching of the gospel. And so there are kingdom patrons everywhere. There are normal people all throughout the kingdom of Jesus who feel like their life's passion and calling is to bankroll the kingdom of Jesus. Gospel patrons. Are you one of those? Earning money in order to turn it around and invest it back into the kingdom of Jesus. To see needs around you and meet those needs. Paul's expectation is that we make money. Money is not bad. Loving money is bad. Having money as a master is bad. But just as evil is being broke, becoming a burden, doing nothing generous, because for whatever reasons, we resist work. So the value of everyday, commonplace work, first, is we get to earn money so that we're blessing other people. Second value of everyday work is this. It's hard work, and that's good. It's a good thing to do hard work. 1 Thessalonians 4:11 says this, work with your hands as we instructed you. Ephesians 4:28, let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with his own hands. 2 Thessalonians 3:11, we hear that some among you walk in idleness, not busy at work. So Paul isn't shy about working hard. He worked hard. He expects us to do that as well. Do you know what I like doing in the morning when I wake up? I like getting on the couch with a cup of coffee and a big old blanket. That's what I like doing in the morning. Do you know what I would love to do in the morning, but I don't do? Exercise. I don't want to exercise in the morning. Why is that? We don't like physical discomfort. We don't. In the New Testament, dualism was the prominent philosophy. So on one hand, you had the physical, which was said to be lesser than the spiritual things, or maybe even evil, immoral. On the other hand, you had the spiritual, which was said to be supreme. In this time, then, life's goal was to avoid getting your hands dirty, was to avoid physical discomfort. Manual labor, hard work, it was understood that was for poor people, that's for slaves, that's for peasants. The ideal in life was to devote yourself to art, study, music, philosophy, contemplation. That was the watermark, right? That was the hallmark of life. And I think we subscribe to this more than we know. So Wendell Berry, he's an author, he's a poet, he's a farmer, and he writes like critical articles and poetry against our culture. I can't actually recommend you read his writings, literally because it's so boring. He's so boring. He's a farmer writing stuff. But he says this in one of his essays, which is spot on. Look at this. He says, in our time, we must save ourselves from the products that we are asked to buy in order ultimately to replace ourselves. We must save ourselves from the products that we're asked to buy in order ultimately to replace ourselves. What I'm saying is we were made to work. We were given muscles to strain, hands to grip, feet to move, backs to bend, but we don't want to. We are dualistic in practice. The work we like is disembodied, it's pain-free, it's effortless living. That's what we want. That's what we try to construct our lives by. So think about it. I don't need to get off the couch to play music. I can ask my Google Home to do it. I don't need to get off the couch to check the temperature outside. I can look at my phone. I don't need to wake up my kids in time for school in the morning. They have an alarm clock that does that. I could choose not to cook breakfast. I could get it DoorDashed. I could choose not to cook for someone else if they need a meal. I could just Venmo them. I could choose not to commute to work. I could have Tesla drive me. I could choose not to counsel someone over coffee. I could just send them a podcast. I could choose not to write this sermon. I could just ask ChatGPT. I could live on the couch if I wanted. And if we're not careful, our physical ability won't be the only thing that atrophies, so will our humanity. Because we were made to work with strain, striving, effort. It's no wonder why we're living in a cultural mental health crisis. See, serotonin is released in our brains when we fight and strain and then finish or succeed or produce something for all of our efforts. Serotonin is released in your brain when you go through that process. It's the same thing that happens when you win at something. What's that rush of joy and happiness that enters your body when you win at a game? That's serotonin. And that's what's released when we do a good job in our work and work really hard and see results. So there's a hard line connection between working hard and literally your state of being and your mental health and your joy in life. There is great value in working hard. That's what we were made to do. Further, hard work, it's not a result of the fall. Work being hard and demanding, that wasn't a consequence of sin entering the world. That was God's plan all along. Adam and Eve were to work hard in the garden. The consequence of sin was not that it was going to be hard. The consequence of sin is that work was going to become futile. And when we joyfully accept hard work, what we are doing is we are redemptively participating in a sin-scorched world. We are pushing back against the curse of sin on work. We are declaring it's not futile. It means something. I'm going to work hard. Paul writes in 2 Thessalonians 3, 7 and 8, "For you yourselves know how you ought to imitate us, because, look, we were not idle when we were with you, nor did we eat anyone's bread without paying for it." Now, the word bread there doesn't literally mean a loaf of bread. This is a callback to Genesis 3. There in Genesis 3, when God tells man what the curse of sin is going to be on work, he says, "By the sweat of your brow you will eat bread." So Paul is saying, I expended all this energy. I worked really hard to benefit, to have benefit, to have bread. And so therefore what? With toil and labor, we worked night and day. Paul, he's not resigning to the curse of sin there. What he's doing is he's defying it by diligently working hard in the world, night and day, labor and toil. He's elevating hard work to be part of our vision for Jesus' redemption in the world, a sin-scorched world. Work, it's meant to be hard. It's a really good thing. And so here's what you need to wrestle with. Do you have more to give? Do you have more to give that you're not given? Are you stewarding your body? You're given a mind, you're given hands, you're given feet, you're given muscle, you're given energy. Are you stewarding your body, what God has put you in here on earth? Are you stewarding that? Are you straining? Are you striving? Are you pulling? Look, you might not be the smartest person in the room, the most gifted person in the room, the most advantaged person in the room, the most well-resourced person in the room, but you know what you can be? You can be the hardest working person in the room. And that's a good thing. That's what you're created to do. Some of you have more to give, and as long as you resist hard, demanding work, you will lose your humanity as you surrender yourself to the curse of work and its futility. So there's value in hard work. I hope you see that. There's also value in work because it's a contribution to society. Third point here. Third thing that's valuable in common everyday work. It's a contribution to civilization, the thing that we call human society. 1 Thessalonians 4, 10 through 12. We urge you, brothers, again, to do this more and more. To aspire to live quietly, to mind your own affairs, to work with your hands as we instructed you, so that you might walk properly before outsiders and be dependent on no one. Again, the church in Thessalonica, people here in Thessalonica, they thought work was meaningless because Jesus is going to return any moment, any day. And this has apparently created all sorts of issues, not just in the life of the church by them becoming a financial burden to people in the church, but more than that, it has caused their witness to be torpedoed. So the problem's not just in the church, problems outside the church because of their refusal to work. He says aspire, look there, he says aspire in verse 11 to live quietly. So apparently, these folks are obnoxious. They're creating drama. He says mind your own affairs. Apparently, these believers are sticking their nose in other people's business. Paul locates what the problem is, why this is even happening in the first place, in 2 Thessalonians 3:11, verse 11. For we hear some among you walk in idleness, not busy at work, but busy bodies. See, when people have time on their hands, too much time on their hands, nothing good comes from it. We were made to be busy working. We were made to work hard. We were made to do demanding stuff. You can't turn that switch off. That's in you. So when we aren't working, you know what we're going to do? We're going to find something that scratches that itch. We're going to find something that we can release that energy into. And the result of idleness then is not doing nothing. The result of idleness is drama. Drama that we create and drama that pulls us in. Said differently, if you don't find meaning in your work, if you're not rising to the vision of this work, you'll find meaning somewhere else in drama. Paul calls these people busybodies. People going around looking to do something important because they have too much time on their hands. Have you ever met conspiracy theorists? Yeah, too much time on your hands, right? Have you ever met someone who just doom scrolls? Yeah, too much time on your hands. Idleness, creating busybodies. People drawn to drama who want to stir up drama. So here's these Christians who are refusing to work. They're a terrible testimony to the surrounding world because they end up releasing all that energy meant for work through the outlet of drama and just end up being annoying to those around them. The point is that if you're willfully a non-contributing member of society, you will not be respected by society because without work, we're a lot of talk and very little action. Instead, what is respectable is when you take your time and energy and use it to be a contributing member of society. So, work right now. I don't know what it is for you. Maybe you're in retail, maybe you're in the service industry, maybe you're a first responder, maybe you're a barista, maybe you're in management, maybe you do manual labor, maybe you're a student, maybe you're a teacher, maybe you're parenting, on we could go down the list. Whenever you clock in and clock out, you are helping society hum. You are keeping the machine that is human civilization, you're keeping that going. You're contributing. You're a contributor. You're finding your part in the whole mechanism that is civilization. You're playing your essential part in it. Listen, we as a human race, and we as a society and a community, we're connected by a web of human relationships, which means I can't do what I need to do unless you do what you need to do. And if you don't do what you need to do, then I can't do what I need to do at all or as well. We all play our part, and we're in dynamic relationship with one another. We need to be contributors. This is the point of work, to literally keep life going for everybody. Now, we don't think this way, do we, on day to day? And it's because we think work is about me and my fulfillment. But work is essentially contribution to the organism that is human society. So what part do you play in making this thing called Earth keep spinning? What part do you play in the mechanism that is human society? That's how you find value in your work. Where do you bring order? Where do you bring prosperity? Where do you bring flourishing? I read a story about a traffic jam at a construction site. The driver, he rolls up to this flag man. This guy posted up, directing traffic. And then he rolls out his window and says, "You must hate your job, man." And the guy's response is beautiful. He says, "I love this job. I love it. You know why? Because it matters. I keep people safe. I care about these guys behind me. I keep them safe. I also keep you safe. And everyone else in all those cars behind you, I keep them safe too. I get to make a real, tangible difference every day. I'm grateful," he says, "I was led here." It's a pretty good perspective. Tim Keller, he writes about a doorman in a large Manhattan apartment. This apartment is home to about 100 families, and this doorman has been serving in this apartment building for 20 years doing his job. And Keller writes that this guy, he considers his work to be way more than just a job. He cares about the people in the building. He takes pride in helping with loading, finding parking spaces, welcoming guests. He sets the standard for keeping the lobby and the front of the building clean and attractive. When asked what makes him drop what he's doing to get to the curb in time to help unload a resident's car after a weekend away, he says, "Well, they need help, and so I'm here to help." Why does he remember the name of every child, he's asked? He says, "Well, because they live here, and this is their home, and I make them feel like it's home." We all play a part in the ecosystem that is society. What part do you play? And look, if we get this vision for work, everyday common work, we will see our work differently. Our work would become more than a task. It would become more than a paycheck. If you see the utter importance of your work, then you would see it as sacred, utterly sacred. Again, remember the Reformation, it shattered the sacred-secular divide. The medieval church understood itself then as the entirety of God's kingdom on earth. Therefore, they thought only religious work was God's work, then there was everything else. But Luther, when he recovered the doctrine of justification by faith, now every Christian's relationship to God was personal, not just institutional. So now every Christian was the mediation of heaven to earth, not just the church. So now all of our activity, all that we do, all of our work is now sacred, not secular. There is no division between sacred and secular. So this is why Luther, he called common work an office, a duty, a holy order, terms used only for priests or nuns in this time. He called everyday work a vocation, which literally in the Latin is the word for calling. He called it ministry, which means service, serving. So you can consider your job, all these things, an office, a holy order, a calling, a service, if you see your essential place in God's goodness offered to all in the civilization that he has built. I remember talking to a friend of mine who was a manager at a bougie coffee shop restaurant around here, and we were just talking about finding meaning in work. And he said, I find a ton of meaning in my work. Because what I'm doing every day is I'm alleviating human suffering. People come into my restaurant every day with pain. People come into my restaurant every day with human sadness, with regret. And I give them a cup of coffee, with every bite of a sandwich, with every friendly welcome. I'm ministering to people. I'm lifting that pain just a little bit. I'm alleviating that sadness just a little bit. I'm ministering to them. Here's also, I think, really something important. Martin Luther taught that when we work in our jobs, we are the masks that God is wearing to care for his creation and the world. So a few different verses here. Check this out. Psalm 145:16 says, God, you open your hand and satisfy the desire of every living thing, talking about feeding the world. Well, how does God feed the world? It says God feeds the world. Well, how does he do that? Through farmers, through processors, through freight truck drivers, through grocery shelf stockers and cashiers, chefs and wait staff, on and on. God feeds the world through you. Psalm 127:3 says that children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb a reward. Well, how does God bring about that blessing? Well, who's building the hospitals? Who's changing the beds? Doctors and nurses, administrative staff, all these people in place to help bring about children. Psalm 147:13 says, God strengthens the bars of your gates. He blesses your children within you. So how does God fortify a city so that its children, its families are safe? Well, not just through an ironsmith that literally makes bars of gates, but good government, good lawmakers, police officers, military personnel, lawmakers, on and on. How does God keep order, beauty, for physical and emotional wellness in our world? Sanitation engineers, physical trainers, landscapers, architects, artists, on and on. How does God serve the world? Well, you're the mask that he's wearing. That's how he meets the needs around you. So are you only changing a diaper or serving some food or ringing someone up or filling out some paperwork, or are you the mask that God is wearing to care for the world around you? Okay, do you see how this helps find value in everyday work? If you get this, okay, if you get this and bring this into your life, you will find immense value for what you're doing. You will be motivated to work and to work hard. Martin Luther King Jr., he's given a speech at a black public school in Chicago, in an impoverished community. He told the kids to work hard, lift themselves out of poverty, and one of the students interrupted him and contested him. And here's Martin Luther King Jr.'s reply. He says, if it falls your lot to be a street sweeper, sweep streets like Michelangelo painted pictures. Sweep streets like Beethoven composed music. Sweep streets like Leontine Price sings before the Metropolitan Opera. Sweep streets like Shakespeare wrote poetry. Sweep streets so well that all the hosts of heaven and earth will have to pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper, who swept his job well. The mask that God is wearing is you. If you get this, our work takes on a new value. And I'll say this too, last point of this point, is if you get this and are motivated, you know what you're going to do? You're going to work excellently. Your work is going to produce excellence. It will inevitably be the best in your arena and in your industry. Christians, then, if you're armed with this vision for work, you should be the best at what you're doing in your respective arena. That's what this means. Because all work is the mask of God's loving care. So now, since there's no secular divide, there's no then Christian coffee and secular coffee, or Christian film and non-Christian film, Christian fashion, non-Christian fashion, on and on, right? There's just excellence. John Mark Comer in his book on work says this: there's no such thing as Christian music. Because a melody can't be a Christian, only a songwriter can. There's no such thing as Christian art because a canvas can't be filled with the Spirit of the living God, only a painter can. And obviously, there's no such thing as a Christian plumbing business. A business can't be Christian any more than a pipe or a sink or a toilet or a shower head can. Only a plumber can follow Jesus. And so what this means is there's not Christian coffee and secular coffee. There's just bad coffee and good coffee. And Christians, more than anyone else, should be the ones making the best coffee, the best t-shirts, the best film, the best literature, and the best innovators, on and on. Luther, again, says this: the Christian shoemaker does his duty not by putting little crosses on the shoes, but by making good shoes, because God is interested in good craftsmanship. Finding value in what you do, being a blessing to others in everyday work. That's how you care for others. That's the mask that God is wearing. And when our work lacks excellence, let me just say, if you don't do this, you're invalidating your own faith. Dorothy Sayers says this, last quote. She says, what use is all of that faith, if in the very center of a person's life and occupation, he's insulting God with bad carpentry? For example, if you're a carpenter. Look what she says, no crooked table legs or ill-fitting drawers ever, I dare say, came out of the carpenter's shop at Nazareth. Nor if they did, could anyone believe that they were made by the same hand that made heaven and earth. No piety, and the worker will compensate for work that is not true to itself. For any work that is untrue to its own technique is a living lie, self-invalidating. So Christians, with this motivation to find value in everyday work, because we're contributors to society, partnering with God in his care, it should make us the most excellent. We should be producing the most excellent things. Last point here is work, everyday work, there's hidden glory in it. There's hidden glory in it. You got to find it. So 1 Thessalonians 4:11 says this: work with your hands. Ephesians 4:28 says the same thing. Do honest work with your hands. So expend efforts, throw yourself into it, use a little elbow grease. There's some grit and grind to work, and that's okay. Work with your hands. Work hard. Do you know who else works with his hands? God does. Psalm 19:1 says the heavens declare the glory of God. How? Well, the sky above proclaims his handiwork. God is a builder. God is an architect. God is a landscaper. Psalm 103, 25 and 26, of old you laid the foundation of the earth, so God is a builder. The heavens are the work of your hands. Now look what it says again. They will perish, but you will remain. They all will wear out like a garment. You will change them like a robe, and they will pass away. So God is a seamster, right? He's knitting together the very fabric of the world. He's not afraid to get his hands dirty. He's not afraid to work with his hands. God is not reluctant to do hard, tedious work. He's here for it. He did it. He's all about it. And now here's what the point I want to make. When we work hard, menial feeling tasks, we are actually positioning ourselves within the revelatory design of God, meaning work itself can reveal God to us and to the world. So I've talked quite a bit about the Reformation. One of the, though, unintended negative results of the Reformation was the distancing of natural revelation from our theology. So the Catholic Church has a rich history of understanding nature as a channel of grace, a means by which God makes himself known and even can encounter us. So Reformed people like us, Bible people like us, we tend towards cool, computer-like rationalism, but theologically speaking, this is true. There is real spiritual potency in everyday things. God can reveal his glory through work, through tedious, mundane work. So, when we're working hard at a task, we become the natural means that God reveals his glory. We're making the invisible God visible. We are mirroring and mimicking what God is like to the world. He works with his hands, and now so do we. So when we see a piece of art, we see behind the art and get a glimpse of what the artist is like. When we hear a piece of music, we hear behind the music and get a faint idea of what the composer is like. In the same way, when we work hard and diligently, we project a picture of what God is like to the surrounding world. By working hard with our hands and by how we do it, we can reveal God to the world. And God gets glory without even a spoken word. So you become the natural means by which God communicates who he is to the world in your hard work. But also, as you work hard at your craft, do you know what's happening there? Your work becomes a channel of grace. So we don't just project who God is to others. In our work, we are opening our hearts to a deeper, greater understanding of the creative genius, the diligence, the beauty, the tenacity of God. In your work, you can relate to God and find out more about him yourself. Hard work can teach us who God is if you let it be a channel of grace to you. So what I'm saying is there is hidden glory in your work. It's more than a paycheck. It's more than an 8 to 5. God is in it. And God has designed it and given it to you to reveal himself to the world. So, I don't know how you're feeling about your job these days. I don't know how you're feeling about your clock in, clock out, the tasks that God has put in your lap right now that you have to do. You got to earn a living. You got to be here. You got to make the most of it. Here we are. So your work, whatever it might be on the most unexciting days, it can remain boring to you, or it can be a treasure trove of value. And so my last question that I asked at the beginning that I leave you now to wrestle with is this: what aspect of this vision for commonplace, everyday work resonates with you? Do you need to work right now to make money, to earn a living, and to be generous? Do you need to just work hard right now so you can recover your humanity, use your body and your grit, and resist the futility of sin and work? Do you need to just contribute to society right now? Do you need to understand your part you play in the outworking of human flourishing, how you are God's mask as he cares for the world? Or do you need to arm yourself with a vision for glory in your work, finding God's hidden glory as you do it and reveal him to others, and as you do it and he reveals himself to you? Let's pray. God, we're thankful that you've called us to work and to work hard at that. And so, God, we just ask that you'd help us to honor you, that we'd be good stewards of the opportunity and skills you've given us, that we would not be like that servant in the parable, Matthew 25, who's given a talent, then does nothing with it, and the master returns and finds him lazy, undiligent, not working hard. God, I pray instead that you'd make us into those faithful stewards who are given very little and then are tasked with more because we've been faithful with the little that we've been given. And so, Lord, our life is directed towards you. You deserve all the glory. Would you help us, God, to obey you and honor you in all that we're doing? In your name we pray. Amen. Let's stand together and respond to Jesus.